My account should have $50,000 in it, but over the past 6 months, large sums of money have been withdrawn several times. I reported the suspicion of fraudulent withdrawals to the bank and decided to set up a trap to lure out the culprit after consulting with them. I knew my husband and sister-in-law were suspicious. The result was incredible. It's been 2 years since I got married to my husband, but I feel like I want to get divorced every day. I am not compatible with my in-laws. My in-laws are my father-in-law who is a company employee, my mother-in-law who is a part-time worker, and my sister-in-law and her husband who live with their 3 children within a 5-minute walk. By the way, my brother-in-law is currently working overseas alone. On the other hand, we are both full-time workers without children yet and live in an apartment about an hour's drive from my in-laws. Going back to when we first met each other's families, I thought I could get along well with them when I saw how my in-laws praised me, spoke ill of their son's self, and joked around while laughing together. So we got married. The wedding was satisfying for the invited guests. After that, we went on our honeymoon to Taiwan. There, I met an elderly Canadian man at breakfast. I lost this hotel guest benefit coupon and was going to buy souvenirs with it. I said, "We haven't used ours yet, and we have 2. Shall we give you one?" But for some reason, the old man's tone changed midway through our conversation and he tried to leave. Because my husband was staring at him with a stern face before I knew it. The old man left the restaurant. My husband shouted, "Why did you try to give that beggar something so easily?" I replied, "He didn't even ask for it, and we weren't going to use it anyway. He was just in trouble." Then he laughed unpleasantly and said, "There you go again, being a hero." I didn't mean it that way at all and was stunned by his words. I was preparing to hand over an envelope to that elderly gentleman before he checked out, but he wrote a blessings, in large letters on the envelope. I muttered to myself that it was too small and embarrassing for a human being. Although I was able to hand over the coupon to the front desk without any problems, I was in a cold war with him for a long time afterwards. I didn't want to divorce him there, but I was worried about what would happen next even on the plane ride back home. As soon as our newlywed life began, problems arose as expected. The problem was caused by my sister-in-law. At the time of our marriage, my sister-in-law was expecting twins in 3 months. For some reason, my husband asked me if it was okay to give her my contact information because she had something to consult with me about. I couldn't imagine what she wanted to talk about, so I put off answering. However, during that time, my husband told me that he had given her my contact information. The next day, my sister-in-law said to me, "I think we'll be relying on you for a lot of things from now on since we're family now. You know how hard it is to raise 3 children these days, don't you? If you're a full-time housewife like you are, you'll definitely be an asset." She then said, "For now, keep your schedule free for a year and a half." When I asked her if she meant that I should help with child rearing, she laughed and said, "It's just something like an at-home job." She didn't listen to me after that. On that day, when I told my husband, "My sister is right. After all, you became a member of my family when we got married. She doesn't need to tell you in advance that she wants you to cooperate." I replied, "If she doesn't have enough hands, can't she ask her mother or her husband's family for help?" But my husband decided, "It's useless to say that now. For the time being, it's your job to pick up and drop off the older child while my sister is hospitalized. However, it takes an hour by car from my home to my sister-in-law's house or my parents-in-law's house. It would take half a day to travel back and forth every day to match the children's nursery school and return home. Even if my sister-in-law and parents-in-law do not understand remote work, I cannot understand why my husband allows his sisters rampage. Furthermore, you are a hero of justice, so of course you will help your sister-in-law who is in trouble," he said with a grin. I'm tired of my husband's persistence. The next day, I went to my parents-in-law's house and decided to refuse everything about my sister-in-law. The next day, my sister-in-law asked me to pick up and drop off her nephew immediately. "I can't accept it because I have work and distance," I said firmly. However, my parents-in-law said, "Don't you have any compassion? Don't you learn from your parents? That's outrageous." They got angry. To me, who was surprised. Father-in-law said, "A wife is someone who serves her husband, her parents-in-law, and her sister-in-law and lives to serve her ancestors." Fact is stranger than fiction. My parents-in-law saw my behavior and seemed to think that I had finally realized my mistake. Mother-in-law said, "That's fine. Please fulfill your duties as a wife properly." Including my husband's family, I was pressed to continue for a year and a half. However, if I do so, it will take more than 4 hours for 2 round trips, which will greatly affect my work. When I told my husband, he persuaded his in-laws and agreed to the condition that I would be free until 1 month after giving birth because he didn't want to lose his free money. So 1 month has passed, and now my sister-in-law brings 3 children to our house every weekend. Water is left running, air conditioning is on in all rooms, the refrigerator is empty, tissues are used up, and toilet paper always becomes a chore. My precious metal products were gone. In addition, without permission from me, my sister-in-law rides alone in my car and goes out to play. If you want to borrow it, you should tell me. Moreover, the insurance for my car said that it cannot be used for compensation when someone other than me causes an accident, but she doesn't listen. Moreover, the car that my sister-in-law rode on it has already been scratched or dented. I sent an email to her husband who had exchanged it before because it would be bad if an accident occurred, but there was no response except for being read. Then my husband and sister-in-law started pushing their children onto me and started going out to play. Moreover, the play escalated gradually. During that time, I took care of 3 children who were not used to it while doing housework accumulated on weekdays. On one weekend too, my sister-in-law left the children entirely up to me and went out with my husband. On Monday morning, I went to the bank after my husband left for work and finally returned home. I was surprised to see that my account balance was supposed to have $50,000 in it, but it had only 3 digits. Upon closer inspection, I found that a large sum of money had been withdrawn several times over the past 6 months. I reported the suspicion of fraudulent withdrawals at the counter and, after consultation, decided to set up a trap to lure the culprit. The following weekend, my sister-in-law forced me to babysit her child as usual and went out with my husband. Moreover, my in-laws were also going on a one-night hot spring trip that day. You should study for future childcare. That's right. You're lucky you can learn for free. Lucky you. They said such things. The next day after my in-laws went to the hot spring, I received multiple calls from my sister-in-law. If I ignored them, messages would arrive one after another on email and other SNS. After a while, I reluctantly answered the phone and heard her loud voice. I can't withdraw money. What's going on? I said, I couldn't understand what you were talking about, and asked her what she meant by my bank account. She just kept cursing at me. Then my husband came out and shouted. This month was a bit tight because of some expenses. We didn't have enough credit available, so we decided to pay cash for this trip. But we can't withdraw any money now. I asked. First of all, whose bank account is it? It's mine, right? Why is your sister trying to use my money without permission? He became quiet when I asked him that. But then he suddenly shouted. That doesn't matter now. We can't pay for our stay at the inn like this. We don't even have money for the train back home. Then my in-laws started chiming in from behind. That's right. We'll talk about it when we get back home. Yes. Send some money to your son's account right away. That's a good idea. I was disgusted by this crazy family and said coldly. You heard me, right? Transfer about $2,000 to my account right now. But I say. I can't do it. I have to go to the police now. The other end of the phone goes silent again. And after a long silence. Police? Why? If someone withdraws money from my account without permission, it's normal for them to file a notice. I laughed and her sister-in-law seemed to have heard it. She said. Huh? You're my brother's wife, right? One's wife's stuff belongs to the family she married into, so it's okay, for me, my family, to use it. Don't you understand that? I said. I don't understand such incoherent logic. And now, my father-in-law shouted. There's no way stealing can happen between family members. My father-in-law started shouting. Of course it's not possible for theft to occur within a family. I asked him if he meant that theft between relatives is not punishable by law. He replied. Of course. If you know that, don't ask. I immediately responded. Sister-in-law and I are not relatives living together, so we are not exempt. My father-in-law was speechless. Then my husband asked me if I was planning on suing his sister. I told him that I would sue her as a victim and also consult about other items such as precious metals that my sister-in-law had taken without permission as theft victims. My sister-in-law interjected with whether there was evidence of such things. However, her flea market app account had already been identified and records of items stolen from me were posted there. Some of them even had photos of warranty certificates so they could be identified as mine immediately. She started crying when she heard this. Then my husband got angry and said, "How dare you make my sister cry? Apologize to her." I replied, "I am a champion of justice and cannot overlook wrongdoing." And I told him that I was preparing for divorce and that he should pay compensation and divide property properly. Divorce? Oh, I see. You're a hypocrite. You cannot beg me to stay. I won't pay any compensation. He laughed. However, I have records and witnesses of how difficult it is to continue married life due to my husband and his family. I will expose everything in court, I said. What do you mean by witnesses? My husband shouted, and the person sitting in the passenger seat spoke into the mobile phone connected to the car's speaker. Sister-in-laws, it's me. Your sister's husband. As a member of the family, I have seen and heard all of your misdeeds. When I realized that money was being withdrawn from my account without my permission, the bank employee told me that if there is no record in the passbook, the possibility of the culprit being someone who can take out the cash card and know the PIN is high. In most cases like this, it's unfortunately done by family members. So I came up with a plan and sent a usage statement of about $3,000 transferred from another account to the account that was used without permission and left it in a conspicuous place in the house. At the same time, I changed the PIN from the previous one. By doing this, even if my sister-in-law tried to withdraw money with the previous PIN, the cash card would be locked and unusable after 3 failed attempts. I thought of this as a trap to ruin all members of my husband's family. When I found out that my bank account was being withdrawn without my permission, the banker told me that if there is no record in your page, the possibility of the culprit being someone who can take out the cash card and know the PIN is high. In most cases like this, it's unfortunately done by family members. So I came up with a plan and sent a usage statement of about $3,000 transferred from another account to the account that was used without permission and left it in a conspicuous place in the house. At the same time, I changed the PIN from the previous one. By doing this, even if my sister-in-law tried to withdraw money with the previous PIN, the cash card would be locked and unusable after 3 failed attempts. I thought of this as a trap to ruin all members of my husband's family. I also left an in pamphlet together with it and said to my sister-in-law, "The hot spring view here is also great, but payment is cash only." It's rare these days, isn't it? My husband and she were grinning at that time, so I was laughing too. Then I sent a long message and photos to my sister-in-law's husband by email. I exposed one after another that my sister-in-law was leaving her children entirely up to me, not doing laundry or cleaning when I wasn't taking care of them, that her unsanitary house was where the children were staying, and that my parents-in-law were condoning it without reproaching her. Then he immediately replied that he had taken leave from work because of his family crisis and had been harboring various complaints and suspicions about his sister-in-law's handling of the children for some time. My sister-in-law said, "Don't make so much noise. I'll divorce you. But I won't give you custody." He had no choice but to remain silent. Then my sister-in-law's husband and I cooperated with each other and consulted lawyers respectively. He decided to claim compensation for misappropriated money and personal belongings, alimony, property division, while he decided to win custody of their children through divorce. When he calmly spoke about this over the phone, my sister-in-law was screaming on the other side of his smartphone while her husband said, "Do you think you can get away with this just like that?" I laughed at him and said, "I found something interesting when I investigated your family background. You left your children with me and went to nightclubs all night long." He was speechless. I thought it was terrible for siblings who have families to leave their children with someone else and stay up all night, but I never thought they were such stupid people. I told him that my luggage had already been moved out of our apartment and that since this apartment was treated as a company dormitory, the cleaning company would come in next week, so he should leave immediately. Then I handed it over to my sister-in-law's husband again. Sister-in-law's husband took the children to his parents' home and had no intention of letting her see them. Furthermore, the house where she lived was in her husband's name, so he would sell it urgently and told her to leave immediately. We blocked all communication channels. Although my sister-in-law and my husband, who wanted to avoid divorce as much as possible, said they wanted to come back right away, apparently they couldn't check out because they couldn't pay for their stay at the inn. In the end, they were suspected of eating and drinking without paying money for their stay at the inn and were reported to the police. After being severely scolded by them, they signed a memorandum promising to pay as soon as they returned home and managed to return home by taking ordinary trains. However, as promised, they left only divorce papers behind, and apparently everyone was exhausted after seeing my sister-in-law's house and apartment become empty shells. After that, thanks to a capable lawyer, I received a lump sum payment of compensation, and both my sister-in-law's husband and I divorced. It seems that my sister-in-law's husband also won custody of their children safely. On the other hand, my former parents-in-law were begged by my former husband and sister-in-law to let go of their family home and use that money to repay compensation and misappropriated money. Of course, that alone was not enough, so both my former sister-in-law and former husband borrowed money and became guarantors. Furthermore, since the bills for the nightclubs they attended were quite high, both of them are working day and night to pay off their debts. As for me, I'm tired of marriage for a while. I want to focus on taking care of myself for now, including the time I wasted dealing with my ex-husband.